All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick. We are recording on Sunday evening. We're going to talk about the Christmas Day games and use those games as a bit of a vehicle to talk about the teams playing them and markets associated with those teams. So let's start off with Spurs-Knicks, Drew. As we're recording, the Knicks are 9-point favorites at the Garden. The total is 226. I have a statement. I'd be interested to see if you agree with it. Despite the Cavs being much more likely to end up with a top 2 seed and a better record and everything, I think that just in terms of ratings, that by the time we get to the playoffs, the Knicks will be the second best team in the East behind the Celtics. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, because they're going to have a center at that point. They don't right now. And that feels important, not just for the way you rate this team, but for this matchup in particular. I could see any one of Cleveland, New York, or Milwaukee being your number 2 power rated team in the East by the time the dust settles. I don't ultimately know what Milwaukee's roster is going to look like at that point. And there is a scope that Chris Middleton gets better, maybe, and that may change things. But right now, no. I have very, very thin margins between Cleveland, New York, and Milwaukee. As we speak. And once Mitchell Robinson is back, this Knicks team has a much different, fingerprint in terms of how they could play Tom Thibodeau style basketball. I haven't seen much of that this year from them. It's been a very different experience watching Knicks basketball this year. Right now, I would make them a little bit better than a +5. So 5 points better than average team on a neutral floor. And I think there is scope to see them get up into the +7 range once they're at full strength. Now for context, I would put Boston right now in like the +9 range. And I think by the time we get to the playoffs, they're going to be like +10, +11. And that's just assuming that you're going to have a healthier and stronger performances out of guys like Holiday and Porzingis once we get to that point in the year. All that said, I think this line here between the Knicks and the Spurs is tough to square. Right now, public ratings would say that the Spurs are like a -3-ish team. I'm not there with them. I think I have more respect for them than that. I would make them right now -1. And this is, I think, a pretty clear and obvious take the points or pass. And there are some soft things around the edges for this handicap, like the Spurs playing in an early game in a Christmas environment at Madison Square Garden that might be, a little bit tough to actually fairly price. But ultimately, I'm going to back San Antonio here.
Okay. Where do you think the Spurs defense is going to rank from this point forward in the season?
I mean, it's not very good. If it's much higher than they're currently playing, I guess I just don't see what would change that you would have to materially adjust your rating on them. So I'll say 17th. If it's top half of the NBA, I guess I would be surprised.
I think the thing is that I think Sohan coming back is really going to help them because I think he's their second best defensive player after Wemby and just having a lot of size there. And Sohan's just a really good defensive player. So I think that would probably be the thing that you point to. Also, I think that like Stephon Castle, even though he looks the part in terms of being a really good defender, I'm not sure that actually bears out in terms of, I don't think he's like an elite defensive guard at this point. I think he's fine. I think he's a liability or anything, but also I do think that him just being minimalized a little bit after he's been benched is probably just going to help the team overall because he's just not as good at basketball as Chris Paul and Devin Vassell and these other guys. So I think that with Wemby and Sohan, if those guys are going to stay healthy, I'm a bit higher on the Spurs defense. I just think that they give you such a high floor. But do you think the Knicks will have a better defense than the Spurs the rest of the way?
I would say it's likely, but not like high confidence there. To this point in the season, I have the Knicks rated as the 14th best defense, and I have the Spurs as the 16th best. And certainly with the healthy Robinson anchoring your rim protection, the Knicks get a bump. And so I would say they probably stay slightly ahead of the Spurs. But your points on Sohan are fair. And Castle, I don't think is saving the day for the Spurs defense this year. Although very promising prospect for, the year 3-4, which is obviously a couple years away.
Yep. All right, let's jump to the team that had the number one defense in the association last year, the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are, as we speak, 4.5-point dogs in Dallas. I think that line is going to climb once there is confirmation that Luka Doncic will be available. Right now, he's questionable for Monday's game with that heel contusion. Guess he's probably going to be right for Christmas. The total is 223.5. Do you think that the Mavs are clearly the second best team in the West?
It's close. It's close to saying clearly. There is kind of I'm having a very tough time confidently pricing Memphis and Houston right now. I think as far as regular season, middle of the grind, random night, I would ultimately say the ratings between these two teams are close. When we get to rating playoff Mavs, it's a different ballgame entirely. Like that Mavs team has proven now on 2 runs that they're the type of team that the deeper you go into a playoff series, the more difficult they are to defeat. And that's not unexpected because they have Luka Doncic, who's a basketball genius, and he becomes more and more focal part of their offense the deeper you go into a series and solve certain aspects. And he's going to just help elevate you as the best player on the court. And you don't have anywhere close to that level of, high ceiling guy on Memphis or Houston. But the Memphis and Houston right now are playing really, really good basketball and really good team basketball. And I would say that kind of having them a hair higher than Dallas right now is reasonable. But if you were to say, go bet a Western Conference future now, and it can't be the Thunder, I mean, this is a 2-second decision to bet the Mavericks in my mind.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm out on Houston in terms of actually being able to win the West. I just don't think that offense is going to have the ceiling that it needs to win 3 playoff series and get to the finals. I think that comparing the Mavs to the Grizz is interesting because I think that regular season wise, they're probably comparable. The Mavs slightly better, I think, when fully healthy, but I do think that there is a gap in terms of how you would scale them up for the playoffs because, to your point, Doncic is so... I mean, every year it seems like he gets better in the playoffs just because I think that his game style is so resilient to playoff defense in that there's no real way to stop Luka Doncic unless you have unless you're the Celtics and you have one of the best defenses around and you can switch all 5 positions and you don't give him anywhere to pick at and he's still going to be good in that situation. But yeah, the Grizzlies are a weird team because close your eyes and picture what their half-court offense is going to look like with 2 minutes left in a close playoff game against the Thunder. And I guess that there is an element where just Ja Morant being able to beat his man off the dribble will always give them a certain raised floor, but it's not quite as clean of an offensive process and ecosystem as just giving the ball to Luka or Shea or Jokic and having them go to work, where the Grizz, they've always kind of projected as a team that's better regular season-wise because the things that they do and their strengths as a team, what are their great strengths? The past few years, it's been depth, which is less important in the playoffs. It's been generating turnovers and living off fast breaks and transition, which gets less in the playoffs. So I think that the Grizz are probably the 3rd best team in the West after the Thunder and the Mavs. But I think that the Mavs are a bit of a step above them in terms of their chances of actually getting to the finals. But do you think there is any scope for Minnesota to take a leap up into that, say, second tier or to be in the neighborhood with the Mavs? I mean, this is a Minnesota team that last year was being, what they minus 180 favorites to win the Western Conference Finals, albeit with home court and Karl-Anthony Towns not on the team, obviously, but it just seems like this team has just lost its offensive ceiling entirely with Towns going.
Yeah, that is very obvious and apparent to me, and the way that kind of gap or step backwards, the way that's overcome is literally Anthony Edwards taking another step forward, which he could and should do, right? He's good enough and young enough that we should see him continue to grow into his role as the heliocentric player on this offense. But what I'm not seeing right now, which we need to see from him, is better decision making. And he's right now defaulting to taking bad shots as opposed to creating for teammates who are good shooters that are on the floor with him. And if we get to say February, all right, or March, right, and we're on the other side of the All-Star break, and all of a sudden you're looking at the box scores and you're like, whoa, 9 assists, 10 assists, 12 assists for Anthony Edwards. Like, what? Wait. Minnesota is now rating as one of the top three team offenses in the NBA. Like, I'm not going to be surprised, but that's what it's going to take, because right now there's just not enough other, focal points of this offense that can do what Karl Anthony Towns did for them last year to be sort of that perfect 1-2 punch. So, I think ultimately you need Edwards to get to superstar status, and right now he's kind of like fringe all NBA, which is not good enough to hang with the other tough teams in the West.
Yeah, I think the Cat will clearly covered up for a lot of sins on this team. Where, I think one of their biggest issues now is that you look at their 5 starters and even their bench guys. Like, who's the cerebral player on the team? Like, who is the good passing player? Who is the guy who, on offense, at least, because, Gobert is kind of savant level on defense, but like, it's really just Mike Conley. I don't trust anyone else to make smart decisions with the ball in their hand. Like, Edwards has gotten better at that and was a lot better in the playoffs last year than he was in the regular season, I think. But like, Julius Randle just does dumb stuff. Jaden McDaniels does dumb stuff. Like, Nickeil Alexander-Walker you don't want the ball in his hands playing surgeon on offense. Like, I think that Cat's shooting and just his floor raising on offense was such a boon for this team. And also, an underrated thing of losing Cat is that just always being able to have a human being as large as Rudy Gobert or Cat on the floor at all times. Like, now they are just trying to survive the Randall Naz minutes with Rudy off the floor, which lately they've been better at, but the dam kind of broke against the Knicks, and then also with the loss to the Warriors. So it's a strange team. I don't really see where the ceiling comes from. It feels like they need to make a trade. I don't understand why Dante DiVincenzo is not good anymore. I thought that the one of the best elements of the Cat trade is that you're going to replicate. It's obviously different because, he's the greatest shooting big man of all time and Dante DiVincenzo is a guard, but you're supposed to get some of Cat's shooting left over by bringing in Dante, and it just feels like he's lost the plot.
Yeah. No, that 100% agreed. And we're on record talking Knicks playoff basketball for the last couple of seasons as not necessarily Julius Randle guys. And like, the gamble of him at least being in some ways a positive feels like, that margin feels pretty narrow right now, the way he's playing. And not even being able to anchor the second unit offensively is a problem as well. So yeah, one of those two guys you were expecting to really be your spark plug when Anthony Edwards was getting a blow, and it's just not happening.
Yeah, indeed. All right. Today is the final day of BetMGM's 7 days of parlays. Monday, BetMGM account holders will receive a Pro Football Same Game Parlay Boost token. Score a bigger payout if your wager with the Same Game Parlay Boost token hits. All right. The evening games, Wednesday, 5 p.m. Sixers at Celtics. Celtics are 9-point favorites. It's probably not a great sign for the rest of the East when the Celtics are being like 8 and 9-point favorites at home to the Bucks, and then the Sixers. We'll see where this one closes as the market gets more efficient. The total is 222. Would you take the Celtics over the field in the East at the moment?
I mean, can I? Can I have that? Yes, of course. I don't think that any of the teams we've talked about in the East are legitimate challengers in a best of 7 series against this team, as long as these guys are healthy. And for what I can tell you, they've avoided sort of any kind of surprises in this first third of the season that would, kind of make me rethink my conviction about the Celtics being the clear and obvious favorite to ship again. I think that the fact that they're actually the fact that they're getting some reps from some guys who, I kind of was keeping close eyes on, and maybe didn't expect that we were going to see them being this productive this soon, is noteworthy. They were very outwardly spoken about their plan to kind of give some of the stars a little bit less of a load offensively on nights when they were playing teams that weren't competing. for especially effectively, and that has borne out true in terms of the way you're seeing players like Peyton Pritchard being used in this offense, and that to me spells there is a clear and obvious another gear that we're going to see from these guys as we get into the games mattering more. And I think, right now, at least I would make them, it's tough for me to see them being anything less than minus 500 in a series price against any of these other teams in the East, if I'm being honest. And part of that equation is I'm expecting they're going to have home court if ultimately the Cavs continue to win and steal the 1 seed, and then your Eastern Conference Finals is Boston at Cleveland, then maybe I'm at, like, I don't know, 350, 400, but it's not going to be tough, in my opinion, at least, to go to the well again with the Celtics this year with pretty high confidence.
Yeah, I can't remember another team that is so. I mean, other teams have not cared about the regular season, but the Celtics is resting guys every night. Like, normally we've seen it with older teams, but this is a very, like, relatively young team still, and it feels like they're almost going to use, like, their warm up for the title is going to be their warm up for the season is going to be like the first round of the playoffs. Like, they'll start playing all their guys. I guess there will be some sustained stretch at some point where they will try and get a bit of continuity, but I mean, they're just destroying everyone anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Do you think there is any upside that is hidden in these 76ers, or do you think that that this is headed towards just a broken and lost season?
I really, really do not understand what's going on.
Very weird.
It's very weird. And there are a lot of people involved in this. There are players involved in this. I'm just like, do I need to completely reevaluate what I think of Nick Nurse as a coach and Morey as a personnel guy? Do we need to completely kind of revise how we're rating some of the the contributing players on the squad? Like, it is not coming together, and the vibes around in particular their megastar and Joel Embiid are not good. They obviously, I think, have kind of set the bar low for their regular season performance, and have kind of maybe made that decision because they are going they do not intend to put themselves backs against the wall to play Embiid in the back-to-back games, but they are going to have to make some tough decisions here soon, or else they're going to be very clearly in the 9-10 plan. And I don't know that ultimately there is a switch to be flipped based on the quality of performance we're seeing from these guys. The kind of rash of player rating negative improvement scores this year relative to years past is surprising to me. And mostly just because I would have told you Nick Nurse was clearly one of the top 5 coaches in the NBA, and it doesn't feel like he's pushing the right buttons with this group right now, and I'm not sure what's going on.
Yeah, I thought at some point that a lot of the Sixers, their futures pricing, the calculation was largely just based around, somewhat subjective assessments of what are the odds that Joel Embiid is going to be. It was like different tranches. So, like, what is the percentage chance that Joel Embiid is going to be in MVP level form by the playoffs? What is the chance that he's going to be the guy that he always is in the playoffs, where he's there but banged up and playing at 75% of his regular season output? And then what's the chance that, like, the knee just completely sinks him and he's not even there for the playoffs, and they're just a complete non-entity. But the issue is that beyond that, like, Paul George just looks kind of washed. Yes. And Tyrese Maxey has gotten worse, it seems like. Like, these guys are like 53% true shooting. Like, these were like all NBA level players like 9 months ago. Like, what is wrong with them? I guess the ecosystem is just so bad. But Maxey, even when Embiid was out last year, Maxey was playing at a higher level that he's played at so far this season. But Paul George just seemingly collapsing. And I get that he's 34 years old and he's been dealing with this. He's hyperextending his knee every 2 weeks. So maybe there's a health element to that. But the fact that it's not just Embiid, because Embiid, at least you could kind of bake in the upside with him. And to be fair, his last 4 games he's gotten through, he scored 30 plus. Like, he's looked better when he's been out there. And it seems like, well, it doesn't really seem like he's getting on top of the knee thing, but at least there's scope for him to do that. But then you also need Maxey and George to get better. And Maxey will be fine, presumably. But George, there are real concerns because of his age. And I think like losing Jared McCain is a big deal. Like Jared McCain was the fourth best player on the team, I would say. And it seems like they've really needed his offense. And now with him done, I just don't know what this team is going to look like. In theory, they're the exact type of team that you want to bet on as a long shot because of just the variance of Embiid, where there's a non-zero chance that by playoff time, Joel Embiid could just be the best player in basketball. Like that's very much within the range of outcomes, but his supporting cast now just looks kind of broken.
Yeah, no, I think that was all very well said. Out of the top 25 players in the NBA, 2 of the 3 biggest downgrades for me are Embiid and Paul George. And this is born out of the data that we've got from them this year. There was a window this time last year where Joel Embiid was performing at a level that was the best in basketball, to the tune of him being, minus 200 favorite for MVP? And then he hurts the knee and it all goes up in smoke. And I think the bet you're making with this team is that Embiid gets hot in March and stays healthy through June, and you scrape together a couple of wins when other teams are not having injury luck. But boy, oh boy, does that feel like a very narrow tightrope to walk. The numbers are what they are. Like at full strength, this team is not better than an average on a neutral right now, and that's amazing considering what they've sunk into this team from a talent and a capital standpoint. And yeah, I mean, that it's absurd to think that a loss of a player like McCain, who you were not counting on to be the straw that stirs the drink, matters so much for this group right now.
Yeah, their other issue too is if you just like draw out playoff paths, like they're very likely not going to get to a 4 or 5 seed. Like, I mean, it's not impossible, but they're 5.5 games behind the Bucks for the 5 seed, and it seems pretty likely to me that the top 3 seeds are going to be Cleveland, Boston, New York. So you're very likely going to have to play like all those 3 teams as your path to the finals. And even now at full strength, if we bake in that Paul George is probably just a bit worse than we expected him to be, and you're going to be on the road for every playoff series, very likely. It doesn't feel like it's going to work out in Philadelphia. Doesn't really feel like it's going to work out in Los Angeles or Golden State either, Drew. The Lakers are 4.5-point dogs at the, what's it called? The Chase Center now? Chase Arena? Yeah. The total is 229. Did the Schroeder trade move the needle for you in terms of how you rate the Warriors?
I mean, my numbers went up for them, but it was pretty modest. And then the other warning signs around this team are still flashing bright red. I cannot believe how far my numbers have fallen between the beginning of the year and now for these guys. It's shocking that you've seen degradation from young players we were expecting to step into a bigger role. You've seen an absence of DeAndre Melton matter phenomenally to just the fabric of the defense for the closing unit. And Curry looks like he's absolutely something is going on with his ability to generate offense right now. He's had a negative downgrade for me so far this year with the data we've got. And Draymond Green has largely just been available this year and is still playing at like a, all NBA defensive level. But he's giving them 0 right now offensively. And they needed somebody to step forward and fill up some of the void that Thompson left in terms of just being a regular contributor offensively. And there should be ample opportunity for somebody to do that next to Stephen Curry. And Schroeder is a guy that could fill that role, but he's just a very different type of player in terms of how much he has the ball in his hand relative to what you were getting from a more complimentary piece next to Curry. And so this was not a perfect fit at all. And my expectations are pretty low, but that could be what helps turn these guys around. This very much feels like a preview of the 9-10 matchup in the West, if we're being honest. And if one of these two teams falls out of the 9-10, I'm not going to be surprised. And I don't actually have a good read on who it would be between them, because I could see a pretty low floor with both of these squads right now.
Yeah, I think it would probably be more likely to be the Lakers, just because I think they have more health concerns. I think they're probably just not quite as good as the Warriors either. And the Warriors, so long as Steph stays healthy, he just gives them such a high floor. And they do have depth and competence. I'm been baffled by everything Steve Kerr has done with his rotations this year. I thought benching Draymond Green was one of the most bizarre galaxy brain type of moves. It's like Draymond Green is still your second best player. Like, you need to be able to construct lineups that get your second best player as a starter. Like, it's just ridiculous. Like, there's this obsession with. I just think that coaches need to figure out ways to put their best players on the floor and have them play the most minutes possible. And I get that he wants to play a traditional center and he wants to play Draymond as well. But then he wants to play Kuminga as well, because Kuminga is allegedly the future, even though he's been terrible this year. Like, why are we moving heaven and earth to get Jonathan Kuminga in the starting lineup? And if you're going to do that, just play Draymond at center and play Kuminga and Wiggins as the 3 and 4, because it's not like that's a tiny 3-4-5 if you're going with the massive wingspans of Wiggins, Kuminga, and Draymond side by side. So I don't understand anything he's doing. I don't understand the infatuation with these random, like, he'll play like Lindy Waters, we're playing 32 minutes a night, and then he just doesn't play the next. Like, it just doesn't make any sense at all. Schroeder, I guess, like, Schroeder's a good player, and you may as well just get a good player if you don't have to pay that much. And he does give them more creation, which they really need. But I just don't think, again, like, I just don't think this really moves the needle. I don't really see where the ceiling for this team comes from unless they they get a player who is as good as Steph Curry to play next to Stephen Curry. Otherwise, they're probably just going to be playing fodder.
Yeah, I agree. And we're not that far removed from talking about the Pacific and talking about how all 5 of these teams feel like they're not that far separated. And I guess I still sort of feel that way, but boy, like the kind of the ranking is starting to shake out pretty obviously, I think. And in the team like the Clippers, I think has taken a huge step forward as a true, reliable, good defense, at least. And that can help anchor them, if nothing else. But I mean, I can't even tell you with high confidence who the third best player on the Warriors is right now. It's
Dennis Schroeder, right?
Maybe or Wiggins, maybe. Yeah, I mean, he is still such a minus relative to the peaks we had from him earlier last season. It's tough to really kind of come up with a fair rating, but it feels like Kerr and all of his iterations of this lineup has just kind of failed to find the right combination. And the Lindy Waters stuff was like, that one was the biggest head scratcher, because like when you're playing him this much and then you're not playing him, like the contrast should be so obvious and stark that, like, okay, well, he doesn't belong out there. He doesn't belong getting this type of minutes and this type of rotation at all. So I'm really baffled. And I will say that with the Lakers, they banked a lot of lucky wins early in the season, so they're probably still in the mix for at least a playing spot. But some of what felt like a shot in the arm resurgence we saw from Anthony Davis was really anchoring some of the success they had early, particularly his offense, and that seems to be waning a bit. He's playing good defense still, but LeBron James taking a massive step back at long last. Age finally came calling, and then their third best player, I suppose, is D'Angelo Russell, and he's been wildly inconsistent as always. Austin Reeves, similar story in terms of availability questions on top of that, and then the rest of this roster is just not very good. So it's a sad time for these two franchises, and I guess if you combine them into one team, they'd be pretty decent. But right now, there's just missing pieces that are pretty obvious for both squads for being realistic contenders in a very crowded West.
Yeah. The issue with the Lakers is they have 5 competent players, and 2 of them are Rui Hachimura and D'Angelo Russell. So, like, where's the... and LeBron, if LeBron's going to be, like, the 30th best player in the league or whatever, instead of the 11th best, then they're just this team just doesn't have much of a ceiling, I think. Even though right now I believe they are leading the division as we're recording, which seems improbable, but I think that'll shake out. I don't have great hopes for the Lakers ceiling ultimately emerging from this morass of 5 teams, and then they're priced appropriately.
The Lakers they're a minus, right? They're like a -1, -1.5, pretty much.
They're like an average team if they're healthy and out there.
Okay.
Again, I don't know what's going on with this starting lineup either. Like, what's the infatuation with like Max Christie and every year Cam Reddish? I mean, Cam Reddish is bad. Why do teams keep playing him and keep thinking that he's like this wing stopper that is going to fix the starting lineup? Like, D'Angelo Russell is one of your 5 best players. Just play him. Just put him in the starting lineup. Like, it doesn't, if he's a slightly worse fit next to these other guys because he doesn't defend that well, his offense more than makes up for it relative to Max Christie and Cam Reddish. So I don't understand it. If you're going to close with D'Angelo Russell each night, maybe you should just start him each night and get him 30 minutes a game so you're not having to play Christie and Reddish. So, I don't understand really what's going on there. All right, it is a critical matchup in the nation's capital with NFC playoff implications on Sunday Night Football. Catch the Falcons as they travel north to face Jaden Daniels and the Commanders. Coverage of the matchup begins at 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock.
As you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up to BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE, and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code BETEDGE. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code BETEDGE when you sign up. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE and get your $1,500 first bet offer today.
Okay, let's close out with the Denver Nuggets, who, as we're recording, just escaped New Orleans with a W. They were like plus 600 at one point in the fourth quarter. They scrape out the win, but alarm bells ringing. The Nuggets are having to eke out these wins or sometimes just lose to the Blazers full stop. As we're recording, they're 1.5-point favorites in Phoenix. This is the late game, the nightcap. The total is 234. There's health concerns over the Suns about whether Devin Booker will be able to go. So that is why the line is what we are seeing now. The Suns will be favored if Booker is able to go. Do you think that the Nuggets have any upside left without a trade, or is this team just kind of doomed?
They look like a ticking time bomb to me, actually. The minutes and the usage and the effort that is going into these very narrow wins, it looks like it's all going to take a toll. And there isn't even like a pot of gold of wins that they've compiled, to lean back on. And I think ultimately there will be a stretch that, sinks their hopes of, favorable seeding in the West this year. If your playoff series doesn't go through Denver, then they lose a meaningful home court advantage. Denver this game is a tricky handicap, this Denver Phoenix game, because for some reason the NBA is having Phoenix and Denver play back to back, where Monday night we're going to see a preview of this matchup without Booker. But meanwhile, Denver is themselves on a back-to-back after going to overtime. So just diabolically poor spot for the Nuggets against the Suns on Monday. And, they're 6.5-point favorites right now. If that's a competitive game, or if the Suns win, then that would wildly change or swing the market for Wednesday's game. And I'm not 100% sure that it should. It's a decent matchup for Denver against Phoenix right now. Speaking of kind of players whose peaks are well behind them, Jusuf Nurkic tends to play his best basketball when he's matched up against Jokic, but it looks like we've seen the best of him, and the toll that's taken on Kevin Durant and what he's been asked to do defensively and answered the call well seems to be impacting his offensive numbers from what I can see. So, I think ultimately, if there are alarm bells for both of these teams, and that's a weird common theme of a lot of these teams that are playing on Christmas, what's happening to you this season? But it, to me at least, feels like we're going to need to see a healthy Booker out there being a huge contributor offensively if the Suns are going to get a win in this game. And with that being a little bit in doubt, I can see why the market has made Denver a small favorite here, at least for now. Denver's long-term prospects all kind of run through how healthy is Nikola Jokic for every potential playoff matchup, and how have they fortified around him in terms of contributing players. It's not working right now. This is a lot of the same personnel and a lot of the same stuff that succeeded in the past with Mike Malone, which is, again, kind of more fodder for why there are warning bells around things right now. Like, sometimes if you're on cruise control in the regular season and you're getting narrow wins, but it's coming at the expense of not having to play your starters as many minutes and not having to give them as aggressive usage, like a lot of what we're seeing from the Celtics so far, then there's nothing to be worried about. And I'm getting all of the opposite signal from Denver so far.
Yeah, it's funny talking about these teams, watching them just reinforces to me that I think OKC is just going to roll through the West playoffs unless Dallas has a gear that they can get to, and also if there is something perhaps specific about that matchup which favors Dallas because of their ability to kind of leverage against OKC's kind of somewhat lack of shooting, I guess. The fact that, guys like at least Dort and Caruso and obviously Hartenstein when he's playing, that the OKC don't have a massive amount of shooting on their team. Though Chet playing at the 5 obviously helps juice a lot of that. And the fact that the Mavs were able to just wall off the rim in that matchup and force Shea to go one-on-one a ton, which he was able to do somewhat effectively, but didn't, the Thunder didn't operate as an elite offense in that series. It just doesn't feel like with health that the Nuggets or Suns, these teams are really going to be able to give OKC a shake at all. It's crazy that the Nuggets have gotten this season out of Christian Brown, who's like legitimately good now, and they've still gone so far backwards because MPJ is just MPJ. The whole issue with the team is that if Jamal Murray is going to play like a poor man's Darius Garland instead of a rich man's Darius Garland, then there's just no ceiling to this team. And Jamal, to be fair, has been better the past 4 games, but they just give minutes to so many bad players, and players who are going to get worse in the playoffs as well. Like Westbrook and Peyton Watson, their shooting deficiencies are going to get more exploited in a playoff series. So I don't really know what the Nuggets do. I think they need to trade for Zach LaVine, do that type of, just do something that injects some more talent into this team and some more just variance and upside, because it doesn't seem like this group has that at the moment.
Yeah.
All right. We are done for today. Don't forget to check out NBCSports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. Also a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From myself and Drew, we'll see you soon.